What's up everybody, my name's Will from Ghost Hack, and today I'm going to be teaching you how to make some juicy future bass chords inside of Serum. Now, the first step in making chords of any kind is to actually come up with some chords, right? This is very important. Now, I'm not going to come up with some fancy chord progression today, something that's really intricate and beautiful. I'm just going to come up with some basic chords that are commonly used in future bass just to display the chords that I'm going to make inside of Serum. So let's do this. Let's do this in the key of E. This is a little bit quiet. Let's do this in the key of E. So let's lay down E. It's your basic minor triad. To make it sound a little more uplifting and sort of major with future bass, it's still going to be minor, but if we add the 7th right here, then it takes a minor chord and gives it a slightly happier flavor, which is good for future bass. So 7th chords like this are used a lot in future bass. And let's put an E down here. That sounds pretty nice. I wonder what would happen if we put the 9th. Maybe we could change this to 150 real quick, and we could add this with the 9th on top. So now, oh yeah, this 9th. I'm pretty sure this is a 9th. I could be wrong, not great at music theory, but here it is. And then for the next one, we're going to repeat that, then just bring it down to an E. But we're also going to delete these Ds in there because they're clashing with the E. And then we can also take these and make them a little bit longer. So now we have a basic future bass, like really nice, thick, and juicy chords. So now we have this progression. Which does not sound like future bass chords, but we're actually not that far away from some basic future bass chords that we need. First, what we would need to do is change the unison here. I like 9. 9's a good spot for the unison. It's an odd number, which means you have a voice right in the center to keep it mono compatible, and it's not too high that it takes up all the CPU. So now let's mess around with the detune. What I usually like to do is I like to have one oscillator that's less detuned like this. And then I like to have another oscillator that is more detuned. Let's make this one, maybe we can actually change this to 7 since it's not as detuned. It doesn't need to be as many voices. This one we can change to 9. And that just makes it sound a little thicker. We have a really detuned layer and a less detuned layer. Alright, and this is how I like to do that kind of wobble, that pulsing sound that you hear a lot in classic future bass chords. I like to use a mixture of a low pass. Let's actually pick a really slight one here. Maybe low pass 6, I might change that later. I like to use a mixture of a low pass. And I like to use the actual volume, which if you click right here, it turns into a level. Like that, so we can sort of take advantage of both of these in the filter. So what's going to happen here is we're going to bring the cutoff about halfway. We're going to assign it to LFO1, and we just want to make sure that it's like this. Now, if your cutoff was halfway and you got a modulation like this, all you have to do is hit Shift, Alt, and click to make it a bipolar modulation, or excuse me, to change it from a bipolar to a unipolar. This is a unipolar one. Uni means 1, bi means 2. I get that confused all the time, but this is a unipolar modulation. Also, you can hear how it did a weird kind of chewing sort of stutter in there. So what we're going to do is hit Trigger. So now it will always start right as the note hits. And now we just have to bring the level down and then modulate it with LFO1. Now, That's a bit slow. We don't usually want it going that slow, but what I like to do here is I like to add macros. So let's add this macro here, and oh, look at that, it's a bipolar one. Shift Alt click, unipolar, magic. So now we can bring it down to something a little more reasonable, probably about there. Now if we turn the macro all the way up, we will hear what the Future Bass chords sound like at the top of this modulation. Now that's too fast for the vast majority of Future Bass. You wouldn't make your chords that fast. Usually what I like to do when I have these macros though is make it just a bit faster than I think it would ever need to be. Therefore, if any speed that I'll really ever need is going to be available in this macro. So now this macro is controlling the speed. And what some people might do in this situation is they might even turn on the sub oscillator and then set it to saw wave, so we get this. And then route it through the filter. So they have like a perfectly clean layer to layer on top of everything else. You can even move the octave. Now I think I am going to do a little bit of this for the tutorial, but I really just want it to be a lower frequency thing going on right here. I just want it to be subtly in the background. So we just get a little more depth behind the chords, but you don't need to do that. After that, as far as the effects that you specifically want, this is really, it's a lot up to you. Like if you want to add a hyperdimension, you totally can. Or if you want to add something interesting, like say some distortion here, or if you want to add some downsampling. That's a perfectly reasonable idea, and I actually think that sounds pretty cool, especially if you're doing it as a layer. But what I'm going to do, of course, is add the multiband compressor right here. So let's hit multiband. That's sounding pretty nice. So now let's increase the mid a little bit. And maybe the chorus a bit for a little extra space. I'm going to choose my preset right here. You can see where it's at. It's just a really tight chorus. And reverb if you so wish. I think I'm going to leave off the reverb, but plenty of people leave a little bit of reverb on. Now at this point you can have a little fun at getting creative. You can kind of mess around with maybe the octaves of these if you wanted to. Or even the detunes. But also the fun part now is that you can change out these wavetables because these are just saw waves, right? There's nothing really that interesting about it. As soon as you add something a little bit different, like even if we just take basic shapes, like let's change this to a square wave. That automatically has kind of a lighter, more organic touch to it. And pulse width modulated square waves are really interesting. You can get a lot of cool textures out of those. But one thing I think is really fun to do, if you go into digital, there's this one wavetable here that is called debussy. Let's see, where is it? Yeah, here it is, debussy. And it sounds like this. It's a very harmonic wavetable. Like this is me holding down one note. To hear, it's almost like a chord in there. It's really harmonic, and I like to add that as at least almost one of the oscillators. Just sometimes if I just add it as one, it can make my Future Bass chords a little bit juicier. And then, of course, a lot of this is to taste, what I'm talking about right now, but you can mess around with this LFO1 shape. And because this is going to drastically affect the way your chord sounds. So other than messing around with these oscillators and the speed, I would also recommend that you mess around with the noises, because there are a lot of different harmonic noises in here. You can get some good harmonics from like the organic noises or the SOR right here. There's some that could layer really well. But even if you just add normal noise, like I like the J60 noise right here, it's very kind of clean. Even if you route that through the filter, it can really add a little more width to your chords, a little more depth. It can make it sound more full, especially in a mix. And of course, always mess around with other effects in Serum and in post-processing, like maybe you could add a phaser right here and flip the rate, the depth, and the frequency all the way down. This is going to create a almost guitar amp sort of effect. Which might add a little more sort of meat or grit to your chords depending on how you like them. But these are really all the basics to making Future Bass chords in Serum. There is not a lot to this. Like, this is not a hard process. It's really about finding, interesting wavetables or cool, fun chord progressions and really doing it that way, just on its own, just with one note. It doesn't really sound like much. It's really when you play some really full chords behind it and you add it to an actual track, that's when it really comes to life. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope questions you have about Future Bass chords have been answered. So we really appreciate all your support, and I will see you in the next video. Happy producing.